All right, let's bring in Jamie. Look, Jamie McLennan's wearing a hat too. Everybody on his buddy show's wearing hats. Noodles, happy Friday. How are you, buddy?
Not too bad. I think I'm a snapback curved brim. That's what I am.
That's a good choice. That's what I would do. You know what? And I'll just admit it, from about most of my 30s, I was fitted. Like I did not do snapback ever. And now I'm back to snapback.
We haven't mentioned, does anybody even like the leather strap?
Oh, do you remember the leather strap hats? And then you have to
you
wear them
with the sort of contraption in the back. Yeah, I don't like that. It's terrible. I mean, the fitted it takes a special either size of head.
Yeah.
Like you either have to have a huge squash, because if you don't have like if you've got a Beetlejuice head, then it doesn't really fit you well and stuff like that. So I never really, I have one fitted hat that I got, and it's got a goaltender logo on it. I got it from Vaughn Sports, so Vaughn pads and stuff.
Yeah.
And the rep gave it to myself and Mika Kiprusoff. Now Kipper's got an enormous head. Like his is like actually, I don't know. He's got lots of brains in there, I guess. It was like big melon. So they needed a fitted hat for him, or either that or a garbage can, basically, and just put a strap on it. But for me, I think I was 7th, 8th, and I just very clean. But I like the snapback. Normal head. Yeah. The flat brim too. It doesn't work for me. It makes me look weird. I'm sorry. It just certain people you can pull it off. Others it can't. You know what drove me nuts? Mike Smith had a flat brim all the time, and he had the big salad hanging out and stuff. Like he looked cool, but I couldn't do that. That wasn't me.
I was just thinking about the leather strap hat again. You know who probably likes those? Cowboys. And then a cowboy. If you don't wear a cowboy hat, you wear like a hat.
They're just highly fit. Yeah, to fit it and take the buckle off.
It was such a pain in the ass.
Yeah, big time.
All right, Noodles. We've got lots to discuss here. Availabilities yesterday. I kind of joked earlier on the show today. We're going to ask you the exact same questions as Chris Johnston, but we kind of will ask you the exact same questions we just hit with CJ. Starting with Connor McDavid. Like, he said, as long as there's windows open here, he'll be fine signing here. We talked about it a little bit yesterday on one of our shows. When you look at situations and what would be better for him, you're going to be able to get an 8th year here if you wanted. If you just take 4 or 5, whatever, you could get another 8 years after that. They've made your agent given him the keys to the organization. Your former junior coach is a coach. Your best friend is the highest paid player in the National Hockey League technically right now. And you've gone to back-to-back Stanley Cup finals. Like, I have a hard time believing there might actually be a better spot out there somewhere for him. So I think most of the conversation is a waste of time. But what did you think of what he said yesterday?
Yeah, I think it's a waste of time too. I think there was a couple words that kind of got people's attention, saying, we'll see what type of moves they're going to do. And like you say, the window of how long I can win here. Anytime it's just not a slam dunk, you go, it's just a matter of time for me to sign. But I agree 100%, because my argument is, where could you go somewhere else and have that opportunity? And people say, well, name an organization. But in order to trade him there, all the good players are going to have to go the other way. So you're actually weakening the team. So you're arguing against yourself. I've always believed the reason why Leon signed 8 years is he knows his buddy was going to sign the following summer. Now, that being said, they've done everything for Connor. Connor's done a ton for the city of Edmonton and for the organization. He's put a lot of time there. I wouldn't be heartbroken if it wasn't an 8-year deal. If it's 4 or 5, that means that he believes in the next 4 or 5 years that they are going to win a cup or win multiple cups if they feel they can put it together. But let's not focus. Let's not just focus all on that. There's work to be done here. I think they were closer to beating them last year than they were this year, even though you could argue the first 3 games were the best Stanley Cup final games we've seen in a long time. They were fantastic. Our first, I guess, 3 of 4, whatever it was. But ultimately, I thought there may have been, would have been just tinkering a little off of last season's team, but there was a wholesale change. They got older, they got slower. And yes, some of the players that left went and had career years. You think of Broberg and you think of Holloway. But Ryan McLeod, speed. They brought in guys, Jeff Skinner. They brought in Arvidsson, Emberson, guys like that. Cody Ceci was well liked. I know he's not an analytics darling, but there is turnover every year. So I think where maybe people got caught up in Connor's words is he wants to see what's going to happen. Well, that being said, I'm sure Stan Bowman will be keeping him abreast of his plan moving forward. And I think there does have to be a few changes if they're going to get to that next level. And that's the challenge. You're going to have addition by subtraction, but you're going to have to create some cap space so that you can get the right players and address some needs. And, I know hot button topics can be goaltending. I do think that you are going to have to do something there. Just for the sake of it. I live in a city where they had the same team for 9 years, pretty much core four, and all of that. And, they'd made it to the second round twice. In the end, I like Bill Zito's thought process is like they won a President's Trophy and he wasn't shy to change his team. It was Huberdeau. It was taking big swings. I don't think the Oilers have to take big swings, but I do think they do need a change in certain situations to try and get to that next level and win the cup.
Well, and that's where I was going to go with you, and where we also went with Chris Johnston earlier was goaltending. But how?
And I'll say this: nothing against CJ. I'm a little bit more intrigued by your opinion.
Well, yeah, I mean, you are.
Fair enough.
It was the fourth or fifth question. We bumped this up to two.
Exactly. It's a number 2 question for you.
But how far of a change, how much of a change do you think, and how much can they do? I mean, realistically looking, and we'll get to Frederic and everything, but the money's going to be tight. Bouchard still needs to get that. Kane, whatever happens there. But where do you think they go in terms of change? How much? And how much could they actually implement with what the market looks like currently?
Well, I think it's for just strictly goaltending. I think, it would be awful if Calvin Pickard was the casualty of all of this. I mean, he's a bargain who won 22 games for them last year, very well liked. And I think he's a terrific 2. I think that the question more comes about what do you do with Stu, who's 26, coming 27, and has had a wildly inconsistent year. You look in the playoffs last year, they had to have a reset. So that's 2 years in a row you've had to reset your number one. Maybe he's more of a tandem goaltender. And that's, the thought process. But sometimes I think you do need change. And I'll give you an example. You look at what Colorado did halfway through the season this year. They're like, we're uncomfortable with where we are. And they changed both their goaltenders out. Now, it didn't work for them in the end because Colorado ended up losing, but they took a swing at it. My thought process is if you take a look statistically, not from the people I love Stu Skinner as a person. I think he's a good goaltender. I love Calvin Pickard. I think he's a quality person, and I think he's a good goaltender as well. But if you look at statistically what they were able to do in the last 15 years in the playoffs, like their save percentage and their numbers are low. Like we're talking I saw a stat out of 147 goaltenders that played 10 plus games. Like they were near the bottom, like damn near the bottom, like 146 out of 147 type of thing, which is, if you're asking just for halfway, maybe you're 80th. Like maybe things look different. So I do think something has to give there. There's lists of players out there, and I'm going to miss a few, but it's not even just upgrading. It might be just a different look. I've talked about how goaltenders, their butterfly, how they stop pucks, how they approach the game. I'm looking, and again, I'm not saying you have to do this, but you look at guys like Elvis Merlikins, maybe somebody like that out of Columbus who doesn't make $1 zillion, but he's a different style of goaltender. Now, I don't know if that's a trade, Stu, for Merzlikins, something like that. Yes, in a perfect world, maybe Jordan Binnington. Doug Armstrong says I can make him available 1 year away from unrestricted free agent. What's Vancouver doing with their 3 goalies? Because Sheloff's has an opportunity to win an AHL championship, and he's been unbelievable. He needs waivers next year. So Demko, Lankinen, and Sheloff's, one of them has to go or is going to go. Tristan Jarry might need a reset. Edmonton boy that Pittsburgh, he's been hung out to dry there. Philip Grubauer. These are names. They're not upgrades per se.
Those are just different looks.
Different.
Those are different looks.
They're different. Yeah. And I'll go one step further too. And I know this will be a hot button one, especially because you got to figure out what's going to happen legally. But Carter Hart, right? There's another guy that might be available depending on what happens. Again, that's a very serious situation,
yeah.
But he might be a goaltender. So I'm just throwing out names. John Gibson's another one, but he makes 6.4 and he more on the training table than he is in the net. So you got to look at all these things. But my long-winded answer is, if you're going to address certain things and take a swing at it, change might be necessary just for the sake of change, not just for, we believe these guys can do it. Well, they've been to the finals 2 years in a row with that tandem. But I think from an optics standpoint, if you are looking to change things, it does start there, 1 or 2, or in a scenario, something like that. And then you look at the D, and then you look at the forwards.
One more goalie that's popped up a bit here in town, from fan base asking about him. You didn't mention, and I think I know why you didn't mention him, because I think it's impossible. But if they really rely, if they believe that their team, they really like their team, and it's been goaltending that's holding them back, and this guy's relationship with management wasn't great. Are you a Jeremy Swayman guy? Do you think Swayman would be something that you try to move some money around for? He makes over $8 million. Like I said, it seems impossible. But behind good Boston teams, he put up good numbers. They weren't a good team this year. He didn't play very well. But, would it be worth the exercise to try to financially see if you could make that work?
Yeah. Okay. So my short answer is yes. But here's the other thing. You're going to have to give up a lot for him, so you're going to weaken your team, right? Because, they might go, okay, it's Evan Bouchard. And you go, well, okay, that's a non-starter then. They might go, because they're not just going to say, hey, give us Victor Arvidsson and Vander Kane for him.
Yeah, or Skinner and Kane and a pick. That's not good. That's not going to do the trick, right?
I just don't. Yeah, I think when I think about it, yes, in a perfect, dream world. But keep in mind, Swayman, this was the first year that he actually played as a starter, right? Yeah. This is the other thing. Swayman, is he a true number one, or is he more of a really good tandem guy? Because his best years were when he played 45 games.
And if he's just a tandem guy, you can't pay him $8 million. You can't.
But so Ottawa Senators are going through that exercise right now, right? You had Linus Ullmark, who was fantastic when he played, but he missed 2.5 months or 2 months of play, where Anton Forsberg had to come in and carry the load. You had Levi Marilainen that came up and played very well as well. But in the end, Ottawa's paying him 8.25, and maybe he's a 50-game starter. Maybe he's a 52-game starter, which is fine if you have somebody who can play 35. So I think that's the biggest thing. That's where Calvin Pickard came in and can give you some good minutes as a number 2. But I think the biggest challenge is, I come back to it. Yes, Swayman would definitely be on paper an upgrade for sure, but he didn't play great last year, and behind a team that, yes, checked out near the end, but he held out for a contract, so he had to jump on a moving train. So he didn't settle in, and it was his first year as a number 1. And even talking to people around the league, it's a huge adjustment going from a tandem guy to being the guy every night. So I would look at everything if I'm Stan Bowman, including the Swayman situation, because finding $8 million as your goaltender, we'll just say 9 because you got Pickard there.
Yeah,
that's a lot to spend. I would much rather be spending 5 or 6 and have a different look.
A lot of this just speculation. The one rumor that appears to be close to happening is the Trent Frederic extension. I think Chris Johnson just said on our show earlier in the hour, the number will probably be 3.8, and we all know that the term looks like it's going to be 8. I don't want to judge the player that we saw in the playoffs as the guy who's going to get an 8-year contract, because the guy we saw in the playoffs, you're like, I'm not even sure he should be part of this thing moving forward. But he had 35 goals over 2 years in Boston. Maybe they're thinking of trading Kane, and they know he can be a physical player to kind of replace him. 8 years is a long time, though, and that's what some people have an issue with here. What do you think of this speculated deal?
So I'll say this. Managers now are using term as currency. And what I mean by that is their whole focal point is the AAV. So if you could get, let's see, Trent Frederic, yes. Side note, and we'll get to this maybe afterwards, but I don't know if all of the injuries were listed. Because, yes, Trent Frederic, that's not the player I saw. That's not the player I knew from Boston. You know, I think he's got more. And I think you see a healthy Trent Frederic. You see a guy that is much improved than what we saw in the playoffs. And I liked his honesty yesterday in his media. He said, you know, I didn't think I particularly played well in the playoffs. So 8 years is too much for everybody outside of guys named Bouchard, McDavid, and
those
Draisaitl.
are the big boys. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So in the end, what a manager does is he uses that for currency to get the number down. And then you kick the can down the road and you say, we'll deal with years 5, 6, and 7, and 8 or whatever. That might be the new manager's job, or it might be, hey, we're going to package him up, or, you know, you hope that he lives up to that contract. It's not like he's signing for $8 million a year. That's the reason why. It's got something with a 3 in it. And I would think by year 5 of that contract, maybe it doesn't look that great, but the cap might be at 140 million by then too, or 125.
Then it looks like peanuts. Yeah.
Yeah. So I again, at the end, yes, 8 years for guys who aren't in your top line or whatever. I would look at Pierre Engvall's deal. I'd look at Brandon Tanev's deal, guys like that who get, but then you look at Yanni Gourde, you look at what Tampa did with a bunch of their players to try and, you know, stretch things out and fit them in the cap. It's like, hey, Nick Paul, we're going to give you 3 million times 7 or whatever it was, 8. And I think Frederic will be a nice fit for the Oilers, but we certainly didn't see his best as an Edmonton Oiler. And it's hard jumping on a moving train. The guy played 1 regular season game, and then all of a sudden he's limping around in the playoffs and did what he could. But I would like to see a healthy Trent Frederic.
Noodles, good stuff, man. More free agency speculation next Wednesday, so we'll chat with you then.
Absolutely. And I do want to see a list of injuries, because I think McDavid was – I think something was not right with him by the end. Obviously, Ekholm, something wasn't right. You know, RNH, the broken hand, Hyman. Like there was.
You're like the third person over the last 2 days who said that.
Yes,
they think Frederic was even more hurt than just the high ankle, right? So
yeah, I look at that group. Not that even if they were healthy, they would have beat Florida. But I think it looks and feels a lot different if they had their best. Put it that way.
Great stuff, man. Have a good weekend.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
That's Jamie McLennan, TSN, Overdrive.
Whereas the Panthers still look like they could have played another series.
The Panthers look like they could have gone on for another round or two. Like it was, yeah.